This is more than abortion. It really does affect us all.
I feel so angry.
This fall, Roe is on the ballot.
This is not just about the right to choice. This is about rule of law and democracy.
Every human being is precious to the Lord. It should be precious to us as a society.
As of this morning, abortions performed in Oklahoma are illegal.
Women's rights are important, but they're not more important than men's rights. They're not more important than children's rights.
The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk.
The lack of abortion does not stop people from having abortions. It stops people from having safe abortions.
It is health care, and it's nobody else's decision.
And more than 12 hours later, a quiet scene outside the U.S. Supreme Court. You're taking a live look in Washington, D.C. tonight, where Roe versus Wade, which protected a woman's constitutional right to an abortion, was overturned. That decision is now falling to individual states.
This is what abortion rights look like tonight, state by state. This map shows the states with the law protecting women's right to an abortion, and you can see Washington state is one of them. And health professionals here are already seeing an influx of patients from some of states where abortions are now illegal or soon could be.
We've already been experiencing the beginnings of that influx for some time. Currently, 54% of our clients live in Idaho. And 25% of those usually have to travel outside of Idaho to get that abortion. We know that that is going to increase 100%.
A lot to get to tonight. Thank you so much for choosing King 5. I'm Christine Pay.
I'm Greg Copeland. We have team coverage for you. We're going to begin with King 5's Julie Calhoun. She's live at SeaTac Airport, which says it's a safe haven for patients traveling from out of state. Julie.
Right, SeaTac says that it welcomes anyone traveling to Washington state for access to safe abortion care. We spoke with a doctor who says just hours after the Supreme Court's ruling, his phone was flooded with calls from out-of-state patients seeking an abortion.
Moments of tears and worry, consternation.
Many emotions for one Seattle area OBGYN after hearing the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And now Dr. Charlie Brown is receiving death threats, which is why he doesn't want to show his face, but says the ruling's impacts are too important to not speak out.
Just within the first few hours of clinic after the SCOTUS announcement, we probably saw an increase of about 25% of calls from patients who were outside of Washington.
Washington is set to become a refuge for those seeking an abortion. The state could see a 385% increase, with the most coming from Idaho.
No, we are not going to turn patients away, whether they are from Washington or not.
Because of that, local leaders are pledging to give more money to bolster abortion care. Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell wanting to invest $250,000 to the Northwest Abortion Access Fund. And King County Executive Dow Constantine announcing $1 million in emergency funding to help with the anticipated influx of patients. Governor Inslee also pledging to welcome women from out of state.
We are going to welcome the women of Idaho to receive choice services in Washington state. We are going to be alert to make sure those services are available, and we have enough resources to do that.
But not all lawmakers in Olympia agree.
Today, the majority said that the state does have a legitimate interest in prenatal life.
But Senator Patton doesn't support the state giving more funding to abortion care.
I think we could spend that money in a much better way.
While a surge of patients are expected to come to Washington, Dr. Brown says the ones that don't have the means to travel are impacted the most.
And those are going to be minority populations. They're going to be people who are who don't have insurance, who are underinsured.
We did reach out to Governor Inslee's office to see if the governor has any plans to call lawmakers back in for a special session to allocate state funds to address the anticipated influx of patients coming to Washington state. We have not heard back yet, but the governor is holding a news conference tomorrow morning. For now, live at SeaTac, Julie Calhoun, King 5 News.
Washington state protects healthcare professionals who provide abortions even if the person receiving treatment is from out of state.
What matters is Washington law. If it's not a violation in Washington and the allegation came from another state, we are unlikely to do anything in that instance simply because it's not a violation.
The Washington Medical Commission says there are 36,000 licensed physicians in the state.
Coast to coast, people are taking to the streets following today's decision. You are looking at some new video from New York and Los Angeles from earlier today. Crowded areas there. Back in Seattle, take a look at the massive crowd that gathered in downtown today. Thousands of people marching. A couple of marches started around 5 o'clock this evening, closing down streets right at the evening rush hour as that got underway. Let's take you live now to King 5 Sebastian Robertson. And Sebastian, you were down there, you saw the crowds. What was the message today?
Well, plenty of people took to the streets wanting to have their voices heard in wake of this decision. I spoke to one woman who's volunteered in the field for decades. She says she had a hint this may have been on the horizon, but says that this morning's decision came as a shock nonetheless. Hundreds, if not 1,000 protesters filled 2nd Avenue in downtown Seattle.
It's going to affect everyone because now that they've had this victory against throwing out Roe versus Wade, they're going to go after every state where abortion is protected.
Friday's Supreme Court decision reversing course on Roe v. Wade moved many to the streets. Women who have been fighting to protect reproductive rights for decades. People that are now left wondering what will happen next.
Women are already coming over from Idaho. We know from the experience of Texas, women are flooding to any states nearby.
For many young people in America now, the future is not as open to them. And we have work to do here in Washington.
A state that may soon serve as a sanctuary for those seeking medical procedures coming from more restrictive parts of the country.
We're supposedly a state that supports abortion rights. They need to come out and show that they do.
Protesters say they're really just getting started. This is the first of many marches to come, really mirroring a scene that we've seen across the country with protests taking the streets in cities across the U.S. In Seattle, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
So one thing the president called for when he spoke to the public today was peaceful protests. Our team is going to keep monitoring any protests for you throughout the weekend. We want to go back to this map that we showed you just a couple moments ago. These are the states where a woman's right to abortion is protected tonight. And you can see the entire West Coast there shaded in green. Today, the governors of Washington, Oregon, and California released a joint statement.
More than half the states in the United States ban abortion outright or severely restrict access to abortion services.
That's why California, Oregon, and Washington are building the West Coast offense to protect patients' access to reproductive care.
We're going to work with our legislators, with our providers, with our patient advocates.
California is taking it a step further tonight. State lawmakers passed a new law today expanding protection for women seeking abortions and their caregivers. It also covers anyone visiting from out of state for care.
I'm grateful I'm governor of California. I'm grateful I represent a state that's fighting for freedom, fighting for reproductive rights, a state that has long stood tall.
This is what the rest of the country looks like tonight. These states, which are shaded right there, are likely or already banning abortions in some capacity. In Oklahoma, it is already a reality. The so-called trigger law there effectively made all abortions illegal with exceptions for medical emergencies and rape.
Law enforcement is now activated with respect to any efforts to aid, abet, or solicit abortions.
So what can Congress do? Tonight, there is no federal law requiring abortion access. Democratic lawmakers don't have the votes to overcome a Senate filibuster. Republicans can basically use that to block any federal abortion rights legislation. That means it will come down to the ballot box this November. We are going to take a closer look at how this decision could impact the upcoming midterms. That's coming your way right about 10:30. Well, women's soccer star Megan Rapinoe has been at the forefront of fighting for women's equal rights.
She's in Colorado for a match this weekend, but started her press conference with today's decision for about 10 minutes and focused on what this means for all women.
I am a cisgendered rich white woman that lives in two of the most progressive cities in the world with the protection of not only myself and my resources, but this resource and this protection, as are all of my teammates. Not everyone is afforded that. We know that this will disproportionately affect poor women, Black women, brown women, immigrants, women in abusive relationships, women who have been raped, women and girls who have been raped by family members, who, maybe just didn't make the best choice.
The court only released one other opinion today. That means there are 7 more to come next week, including the separation of church and state case involving a former Bremerton High School JV football coach. Joe Kennedy was placed on leave in 2015 after he refused to stop praying on the football field after games. Moving forward, there are new questions whether overturning Roe versus Wade put other precedents in danger.
One Supreme Court justice hinted that contraception and same-sex marriage could be next. We're going to dive deeper into same-sex marriage for you in about 3 minutes. Also ahead for us tonight, a landmark vote on gun control legislation will explain what is waiting for the president's signature.
Western Washington's first heat wave of the season is expected this weekend, with temperatures getting close to the 90s. Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett is tracking your forecast up to the minute.